Kate Hardcastle, who's entrepreneur and journalist, and author Janelle Aldred. And there they are. They're looking absolutely stunning this morning. It's great to have both of you here with us. Let's just dive straight into it then. Kate, I'll come to you firstly. This headline there in The Observer, ministers accused of spoiling for a fight with nurses on pay. Now, it's probably the last thing the government wants, isn't it?
Good morning. It would be a real shame if the headline was the reality behind a scenario where we're seeing so much pressure on our nurses fighting for their cause, fighting for the right to have what they describe as a living wage. I think when we talk about the NHS, there's often this reality that we are trying to talk about the system and not the people on the front line. Our nurses, our doctors, the people serving there, the people who will be the first to touch us and the last to touch us, as in the Michael Rawson poem, which is that care that goes throughout our lives, are incredible, in my opinion, and think that we never give them enough recognition. There's never enough acceptance of just how incredibly challenging that job is. We've got 999 calls going through the roof, increasing year on year. They've just brought us through the pandemic, and therefore, personally for me, the reality around this conversation needs to be a very human one. There is, it suggests in the report today in The Observer, that there's going to be some movement, hopefully, in the conversations that have seemed to be a bit of a stalemate so far. We've got Steve Barclay there acting on behalf of the government. It's been suggested that he has not wanted to discuss salary, has not wanted to discuss the remuneration on the last two conversations. But that's needed because the suggestion from the union is if even there is perhaps not even inflation, an increase that meets inflation, it might be sub-inflation, that still might be enough for them to accept it to prevent what would be a critical strike at a critical time. Latest polling shows that over half of the UK public are behind the nurses' strike action, but of course everyone wants to alleviate that. No one wants that to happen. I think the reality is we have to have open conversations about the success of the NHS, how the organisation and the system works, without anyone feeling that there should be any additional pressure or focus in terms of the service we get as patients from the workers within it.
Absolutely. And let's turn to a different matter then. Janelle, the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, actually towards the bottom there, that headline, we can see ban Albanians from claiming asylum. That's according to a minister. And I think the key question here is, why are Albanians being targeted, particularly Albanian men?
Yeah, Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, is saying that what he thinks is that there should be a ban on Albanians from claiming asylum because essentially it's being declared a safe country, and so that they cannot, claim asylum on the basis of coming from somewhere or fleeing something which they say they are not fleeing because it's a safe country. I think it's really interesting how Albanians have become the new people that, that it's all focusing and swirling on around them, particularly as a group. I think we need to talk about migration in general. They do want to reduce net migration in this country. The government's under pressure to do that. Albanians seem to be the buzz nationality at the moment that everyone's focusing on. But I think the focus should not just be on refugees about fleeing asylum, but should also be about migration, because migration has been proven to be good where people have skills, can come and do some of the jobs that, not only the jobs that people don't want to do, but some of the highly skilled jobs that I'm sure some Albanians are well qualified to do. So I think this conversation is a bit reductive in terms of the way it's been had, and we could have it in a more nuanced way, a better way, rather than making it about Albanian men criminalising a whole group of people, because there will be criminals in and amongst them, as there are within every racial and ethnic group. There are some criminals, there are some bad people, there are some brilliant people, and that goes on everywhere. So I think that's a different conversation. But in terms of this, they're saying Rishi Sunak's going to meet with his counterpart. They're expecting a deal to come so they can send failed asylum seekers home more quickly, which is something I think, if someone's application has failed, then yes, we should be able to send people back if, all routes have been taken. So I think it is an interesting slant on the conversation, but I also think there's a wider conversation we need to have about our asylum system, which is correct, that it is quite broken. Applications are taking such a long time, which means there's a massive backlog. So there are big questions to be answered, but I don't understand why we're focusing particularly on one ethnic group to solve all of those issues. But there are some genuine concerns there about too many people coming, and so how can we make sure that failed asylum seekers are sent back if there's no asylum to be sought?
And Kate, let's come to the Sunday Mirror. Now, this is a story that certainly made headlines and no doubt will continue to make further headlines. So turning our attention then to the Sunday Mirror there, utterly explosive. Netflix show is worse than royals can imagine. I think that headline, the utterly explosive, an understatement much. I'll be watching. I mean, I don't know where you're coming from on this. What's your stance on this?
My personal stance is probably going to be one that isn't perhaps seen as a little dull and boring. Just to go back to the headline, I've literally just flown in from the States from work, and this was absolutely number one news story across the network all week because Prince William and Princess Catherine were out there for the environmental award in Boston. They were there all week. Yeah, the Earthshot Prize, thank you. And obviously this was a trip that the US press were talking about being marred because as soon as they were out there, this trailer hit for the Netflix documentary. I've had the good fortune of working with both princes through charity. I have seen them firsthand in their work with children, and I think they're both incredible characters. And I think at the root of this, yes, there might be the system, there might be the royal family and all of your feelings with that, but there are two brothers and they're a family, and I defy anyone who is in a family and has got family dynamics not to have had challenges. And the very idea, every single time I read a news report on this, Vanessa, I think of the dynamic of a family politics, a family dynamic being blown up onto front pages every single day, that of which two brothers that have gone through so much already. It just makes me incredibly sad.
Absolutely. They don't have the privilege of just keeping their troubles within the living room setting or the kitchen table if you want. Everybody has to know. And Janelle, just looking at the front of the Sunday Express there, William, I'll fight back. I mean, he has been pretty quiet so far. So will he really fight back?
Well, I think although he may have been quiet himself, palace sources have never stayed quiet. And throughout this whole thing, it was just this time last year when they decided not to go with the BBC and to go with ITV for their carol service because of the documentary or the programme about the briefing war between the two princes. And so I don't think it's that they've ever been quiet. I think they haven't gone on the record as Prince Harry and Meghan have gone on the record about the way that they feel. So ding dong, I think if they are willing to front up and say their piece, then I think they should front up and say their piece. I think what can be incredibly toxic is kind of the briefing and the sources and the friends, and this happens on both sides. And I think actually, as Kate just mentioned, it's hard because they're family and we all have family dynamics, but their family is not like our family. Their family is also a system and a process and a hereditary crown. So in that sense, there's a lot of other dynamics going in. And so I think that if they do want to go on the record, then they should. And I think it would be helpful for some people if they actually said what they thought. But I think when it's coming from anonymous sources, sniping and briefing from the sides and private secretaries and bringing forward all the WhatsApps, and I think that's why Harry and Meghan have gone on the record. And I think if William wants to go on the record, then I think he also should.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I mean. He has been quiet. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he does actually step away from that sort of the shadows of anonymous sources and actually come out full force and say it. We're just running out of time. I wanted to talk about the England match facing Senegal later. It's going to be explosive. Senegal hoping to make history, so they will definitely give up a good fight. But we'll be back with you in the next hour. So that is Kate Hardcastle and Janelle Aldred. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. See you very shortly. Well, still to come on Sky News Breakfast, we'll have more live in Qatar.